I'm Peter Russell. I teach at UCLA and Pepperdine, and I'm here to talk today to you about three amazing stories. And I'm going to break down each one of them and tell you what's great about it. And the first one I'm going to start out with is a great new television show. In fact, it won Emmy of the best drama last year. It's called Mr. Robot. And I'm really proud one of my students has been just really intimately involved in this story from the beginning. And I'm really proud of him. And I also want to talk about why Mr. Robot as a television show has done so well. So when we look at a show, a television show, it's very different from a film in a lot of ways. First of all, we need a hook that's going to bring people back for 100 episodes, at least, maybe 150. I have a manager who says, Peter, we got to get to 100 eps, whoever you're working with. We need to get to 100 eps because that's when the big payoff comes. But a hook in television is different than in a movie. It's what's going to bring you back to the story for episode after episode. So what is that in Mr. Robot? Well, the hook in Mr. Robot really is this cyber vigilante fighting against these huge villains. I mean, if you have credit card debt or if you have a school debt, then these villains are people you can hate. And part of the reason Mr. Robot's done so well with the young demographic that it has is that so many students, and I have them at UCLA and Pepperdine, they're in debt. They're in debt $100,000 or $200,000, and it's a debt you can't get rid of. You can get rid of credit card debt. You cannot get rid of school debt. So the hook here for that audience, and it's why Mr. Robot is partly so popular, is that it's identifying the villain as a villain that these people can hate. And that's going to bring them back for many, many episodes. Now, what's the world here? It's the high-tech world. It's out of the matrix. And I often say in television, if you want to create a good original TV show, and I urge that you do because the market now is roaring. We've never had a better time to buy television, to sell television story. We've gone from 250 to nearly 500 scripted shows in television in America in the last 5 years. It is a boom. So you want to have a movie idea that you love and you want to twist it slightly. That's what Mr. Robot does. It twists the genre of the Matrix and it makes it more modern. It's the cyber vigilante who is fighting back against the system, fighting back against this incredible enemy. So what's the setting? Well, it's New York. That's perhaps not its most important thing, its most important attraction. The theme here is you can fight against the biggest enemies in the world. They are, in this case, the finance company that run the world. The tone here is very real. And the tone is important in a television show because if it's real, you want to make sure the show gives you real, genuine, inside information. And in Mr. Robot, that's what you get. You get all this great technology. You really understand how the internet works. It isn't just that horrible cliche in a movie where somebody just goes, oh, we're in, and then that's the last you hear of the computer technology. It's all about the computer technology. It's very real. The character situation in a television show needs to be one where it is a permanent dilemma. It's not resolvable in one episode. That's really important, and it's different from movies. For instance, in a show like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which was a great show by Joss Whedon, Buffy's permanent dilemma is that she wants to just be a cheerleader, happy at a high school, but she has to kill vampires every week. That dilemma is never resolved. When you have a bad television show, they don't do that. They simply give you a character that you can resolve within a few episodes. It's no fun. The permanent dilemma here is that our hero is insane, and he's also never really going to be able to get away from computers and from the internet. That's the way he fights the villain, but it's also the way that keeps him alienated from the real world. So we have a fantastic permanent dilemma in this show. We also have, usually in a television show, a guy or a girl with a superpower who is misusing that superpower at the beginning of the pilot. In Jessica Jones, she's misusing her superpower. In even a show like Mad Men, Don Draper's misusing his seductive ability to tell stories to seduce women and to ruin families. In Breaking Bad, we have a chemical genius who is misusing his superpower at the beginning of the pilot. He's not using his chemical genius to do anything. By the end of the pilot, he's using it for malevolent purposes, but he is using it. And so we also need characters who fascinate and surprise us. So Mr. Robot has all of this. So what brings you back every week to Mr. Robot is the same thing that brings you back to Man in the High Castle, to Making a Murderer, to Orange is the New Black. By the way, what is the big hook in Orange is the New Black? It's a great show done by a great female showrunner. The question that brings you back is, will Piper ever figure out her sexuality and make it out of prison? And that's a permanent dilemma because she never does. She keeps going back from men to women to men to women, and we want to watch and see if she resolves it. She never will. Most great TV stories have this story question at their center, and you need that too. What's the question in your television show? For Jessica Jones, it's, will Jessica learn she can fight the villain and win without losing her ability to trust and love? For Breaking Bad, it's, how far is Walter going to break bad? The answer is insanely far. So, Mr. Robot, the question is, will Elliot be able to take down the evil villain who controls the world's entire banking system? A villain who enslaves nearly everyone on the planet who has debt? That's a great question. And we're going to see how, by the way, in Game of Thrones, it's a very simple question. Who is going to win? Which family is going to win the throne? And it takes 8 years, 10 years, they say now, for that question to resolve itself, okay? So we always have this in a great television show. We always do. The world here is not that great. Breaking Bad's is way better. Mad Men's is the cool world of 60s sex and television. Orange is the New Black, what do you think that is? It's women in prison, and it's very sexy. That's a great world. Mr. Robot's world is the Matrix, but it's twisted. It's set in grunge, hipster New York, Brooklyn, New York, and that also appeals to its target audience, right? And the venue matters too. Are you writing your show for network? Are you writing your show for cable? Or are you writing your show for internet platform? If you're setting it for network, it's going to be more tame, but it also is 10 times the money. If you're setting it for cable, you're making less money, but you can be far more free in what you show. If you're setting it in the IP world, you can show anything, right up to and including sex and violence. The content is twisted more and more depending on the platform, yes? Now, classic TV genres are just twists. That's what makes a modern television show. So take a television show you love and twist it. Give it more sex, give it more violence, or give it an appealing villain that we can all hate. Mr. Robot is cable, which means we can show nudity, we can show drug use. We have a niche audience, right? That means you can have several plot storylines and your hero can be darker than he might be in network. A lot darker, and you can keep him flawed. And that's exactly what Elliot is in Mr. Robot. Now remember, in television, heroes don't heal. They just keep bleeding. In a movie, a hero will heal by the end of the show. Not so in television. So if heroes don't heal in television stories, then why do we want to watch them? Because remember, in University Story, in my lectures, I'm always talking in movies about how heroes are healing, and that changes what's compelling about them. Well, in television, if the heroes don't heal, then why do we want to watch them? Because they're going to surprise us with new character revelations. Anybody remember that great moment in The Sopranos when Janice and Richie, who are about to get married, are having a quiet evening at home when she's cooking him dinner and they're both irritated, but it's just another night. Suddenly, Janice starts irritating Richie. Suddenly, Richie starts irritating Janice. And suddenly, Richie hits her. He backhands her. He's never done that before. Now they're about to get married. That's a big surprise. We've never seen Richie do that before. It's not a change in his character. It's a revelation because we have a new conflict. She's irritated him. And we also can see that this is going to be the way it's going to be for the rest of their marriage. He's setting her up to get hit every night, and then he sits down to have his dinner and he says, "What are you going to do, cry now?" And he starts eating. Now, Janice is about to surprise us a lot because Janice walks out of frame. When she comes back, she's got a gun. He looks at her and he sneers. Janice, I've got no time for this. Boom! And she kills him right there. Now that's not Janice healing, for God's sakes, or really even changing. She's just showing us a new facet of Janice as a badass. That is the critical way television heroes give us excitement. And it's why we want to watch television, not to see them heal or even get worse. Grey in Grey's Anatomy wanted to get married, I think, in year 1. When did she get married? I think year 9, and now she's divorced again. It isn't about her healing as a character, it's about her surprising us. And in fact, television is kind of more like life than movies in this way, and it's part of why TV is so cool. Television shows us surprise. Have you ever known somebody for 15 years? Don't they just get weirder and weirder the better you know them? Finally, they're so weird you can barely take it. Well, you're just learning who they are. You're weird too, by the way, and you don't reveal it to someone at the beginning. It's a process. That's why television story works so well, and why in a lot of ways it's a more sophisticated form than movies. So the surprise is what we're going to see in Mr. Robot as well. In Game of Thrones, surprise reveals character. Remember when the Lannisters, the brother and sister, are having sex at the end of that pilot episode, and suddenly the little Stark boy climbs up the tower and he sees them. Now, we didn't know Jaime Lannister was bad until this moment, but Jaime Lannister goes to the window, takes the Stark boy by the chest, says, "The things I do for love," and shoves him out the window. Surprise! Jaime Lannister is super evil, and he's also banging his sister. These are the surprises that make us love television, because they reveal character in such a strong way. So, how is this going to work in a movie, in a television show like Mr. Robot? Well, it's going to work in a similar way. These conflicts are going to be what we see Elliot, our hero in Mr. Robot, go through. Now, Sam Esmail, and by the way, Gingy Cohan is the fantastic showrunner of Orange is the New Black. Gingy is one of the most talented television writers ever. She can handle 10 or 11 or 12 storylines in a single episode, and we're going to talk about what storylines are, because Mr. Robot has 4. To handle 12 storylines in a single episode is a sign of a master. She can do it. Very few showrunners can handle that many storylines. I really love her talent for being able to do this. Now, let's take a look, though, tonight at Mr. Robot. Now, what does Mr. Robot, let's just logline Mr. Robot. Does everybody know what a logline is? Because a logline in television and a logline in movies is very different. In a movie logline, you're telling the story of how someone changes, the hero. In television, you're simply showing the hero's goals and his obstacles in the way. It's a very different logline. I urge you, if you're writing television, to do what we call breaking the A-story logline over and over again, because it's literally creating your story by asking yourself, what is my story, and putting it in a frame. Now, here's Mr. Robot's logline. When a lonely, reclusive cybersecurity engineer by day and a vigilante hacker by night is offered a chance by a mysterious anarchist named Mr. Robot to throw a wrench into the hugely powerful financial international corporation that runs our world, the engineer struggles with his temptation to overthrow a system he sees as deeply unfair, one that the elite use to control 99% of humanity. Now, if this were a movie, he would heal this wound, he would overthrow the corporation, or they would smash him. In mystery thrillers, which this is, you can see the villain often wins. But this is television. It is the struggle that's going to go on for 120 episodes, and it will make it, because this is a great hit show, that makes us want to watch Mr. Robot. His wound, which we're going to see, will bleed in every episode. It will look like it might get better, but it doesn't. Now, this show is created by Sam Esmail, and he is the creator, and one of my former students, Cor Adana, has been instrumental in creating this show from the beginning. I'm really proud of Cor. And this show is marvelous. So let's take a look at how it actually works. We're going to break down this story entirely so you can understand how you can write an hour-long drama that's like this. Now, this is a serial, multi-story structure. That simply means that you have both an overarching goal for the season, but you also have stories that get resolved inside the episode. This is the most popular form of television. Why does structure matter so much in television? It matters because people in television have a short attention span. And you need to give them many different story plots because they're also arguing with their girlfriend, they're also looking at their cell phone, their dog wants to get out, and they're also in a bed that they're uncomfortable in. And they're probably emailing somebody, right? All of that's happening when you watch television. It's not true in a movie theater. Now, shows like Mad Men, Sopranos, Game of Thrones, they all have an ongoing storyline over the course of the entire run, but they also have multiple mini-stories in each episode. Now, the A story is the main story of the week that follows the character's dilemma, the hero's dilemma. The B, C, D stories in television also have something to do with the main hero, but they're different stories. And they alternate in a very particular way, and it doesn't matter who you are as a creator, you will always alternate your structure in this general way. Soderbergh, Cronenberg, even David Lynch, he's probably dragged kicking and screaming, but he follows this form as well. If you don't follow it, great. I'm happy. I love that you're going to break these rules, but you have to show me that the story's going to work. If you want to be the first to break this pattern, I'm with you. But the pattern to be broken has to be broken in a way I've never seen. Let's try it next time we do a consult. Now, here are the 4 storylines in Mr. Robot. Can the hero, Elliot, stop the big villains, the bank? Can he find them and stop them? He has to find them. That's Creed. This is a mystery thriller. Can Elliot and his best girl, who's not his sexual or romantic partner, can they bond and help each other heal? That's the B storyline. C is, will Elliot team up with his mentor in this story, Mr. Robot, to bring down the corrupt system? And the 4th, the D storyline is, will Elliot save his shrink from her horrible boyfriend? Each of these storylines get asked in the cold open in the first act, and they get answered by the end of the 4th act. They all get wrapped up, and that is critical. Every one of your storylines in television must be wrapped up and answered yes or no by the end of the show. So how does this 4 storyline work in Mr. Robot? Okay, so Mr. Robot, and we already know what the log line is. Let's ask ourselves, what's the hook? Well, we already said we want to see this cyber vigilante win against the Matrix, okay? We want to see whether he can do it. And in the cold open of this story, now I suggest you guys get the opening pilot episode of Mr. Robot up with you on your screen and watch this with me so you'll understand this structure really well, or get the script, either one. I can't show it to you here for copyright reasons, but I urge you to go through it with me. And by the way, guys, I really urge you to get the script and watch it as you watch the episode. It's amazing what you learn when you do that. Now, this is a mystery thriller. Now, a few years ago, all I did was movies. I didn't do television at all. Now, 80% of my business is television, maybe 90%. I learned a lot about movie genre, and I learned a lot about mystery thrillers. I have a book coming out on it. Mystery thrillers in movies, I thought, oh God, when television began such a big deal, I thought, am I even going to work? Can I take what I've learned in movies and put them in television? The great answer is yes. Everything I've learned about movies work in television. There's only 2 big differences we already mentioned. Heroes don't change. People don't change, and you can tell a lot more than show. And those are the 2 critical differences between movies and TV. Everything else is the same. All the genre patterns I'm going to show you work in television just as they do in movies. And Mr. Robot is a mystery thriller. What does that mean? One of the things it means is that the villain is hidden. And he's not a small villain. He's a huge villain. He is the most malevolent villain you could ever imagine, but he's hidden at the beginning of the story. So when we open Mr. Robot, how do we open it? Elliot says in a VO, there is a conspiracy bigger than all of us. It's a group of people that we don't know, the 1% against the 99. And as he tells us this, we see the shadowy, mostly probably white men, standing around behind a boardroom, and we don't see their faces. Why? Because remember, in a mystery thriller, whether it's Chinatown, LA Confidential, Salt, any of these movies, the real villain is hidden at the beginning of the story. We don't see him, but everything happens because of him. There's a powerful group of people out there, and they run the world. Yes, they're invisible. Now, mystery thrillers are very hot in television right now. I urge you to think about making one. Man in the High Castle, which is a brilliant adaptation of a Philip Dick story. Actually, it's not adaptation, it's a hallucination. They're completely changing it. Jessica Jones, Mr. Robot, mystery thrillers, many coming. I'm working on several right now. So just let's look at what a mystery thriller means. Mystery thrillers are about hidden evil. Whether it's Maltese Falcon or Inception or LA Confidential or Salt, thrillers are not, it's not the same as a thriller. In a thriller, the villain comes out and you see the hero battling him fairly quickly. You may not know who he is, but you see him battling him. But that's true in Seven, but it's not true in Salt or Inception, because in a mystery thriller, there's 3 levels of story plot. Okay, stay with me, guys. This is a little complicated, but you need to know this because Mr. Robot has them all. And the reason they have them is the mystery thriller audience wants to be baffled. You ever seen anybody who loves to do crosswords? They're looking at the New York Times crossword puzzle, and what are they doing? They're going, oh my God, I don't think I can solve it. Oh, Peter, I don't think I can solve it. Oh my God. What is that? That's the adrenaline that comes from you looking at a puzzle, not being able to solve it. Then when they do solve one, what do? They go, ah! They get a kind of a dopamine high. It's a kind of an orgasm because they have now solved the mystery. That's all mystery thriller does for you. It poses a mystery and then it lets you solve it, okay? Not my genre. When I went to Inception, I was like, what the hell's happening? I'm going to leave the theater. But the mystery thriller audience loves that mystery. Now, that means they crave a complicated story. So there's 3 stories in mystery thrillers. There is the distraction plot. That is what you see quickly in Act 1. That looks like the real crime that's going on in the story, but it's actually just a distraction. The second plot is the emotional change in the hero that helps him solve the crime. And the third plot is the real crime, what's really going on. That does not get revealed till Act 5 in the story. Now, it's hidden. Okay, so in this story, it's the fact that this bank runs our world. This bank controls all of us. But that's not what we see at the beginning of the story, okay? What do we see? We see a hero with a core wound. If you look at the beginning of the story, you'll see that Elliot is sitting in a subway with his hoodie on. He's got hooded eyes. He looks like a crazy guy. He's a great actor. And he is a crazy guy. He's paranoid. He believes that the world's out to get him. And in fact, he's mentally ill. His core wound is that he cannot connect to people, that he is alone, that he's helpless, that he is emotionally unable to ever be with anybody. And so what we see in the cold open, which simply means the first 5 pages of the script, the first 5 minutes of the story, we see him on a subway. We see him saying, there's all these crazy people out here, and there's conspiracy to damage us all. And then we see him suddenly say, shit, I should have gone to Angela's birthday party. Why do we see those 2 things? Because the B story here is, can Elliot bond to his friend Angela and not feel alone? So we're going to see the A and the B story in the cold open. You always do. Later we're going to see what those 2 are in Breaking Bad. The cold open gives us those 2 storylines, and they're going to alternate through the entire rest of the hour pilot. He says, I should have gone to Angela's birthday party, but I didn't because I cannot connect to people. Guys, if you want to give us sympathy for your hero, show his core wound or her core wound immediately. Show it in the first minute of the story. If you've ever gotten a note that says, your hero isn't sympathetic, it's because you're not showing their core wound. What makes you like someone? Not because they're rich or famous or strong. What makes you like someone? When they show you their vulnerability, when they show that they are screw-ups just like you. This is what great stories do immediately, and this is what we get with Elliot. So remember, in the cold open, we have the A and the B story. The A storyline here, can Elliot bring the big villains to justice? What's he doing here in the cold opening? If you guys are following along, please do. Please be watching this while I give you this lecture. It's going to be so much better for you if you can. I wish I could show it to you. Remember, I told you, a hero in a television pilot is often misusing his superpower at the beginning of the show. And Elliot is misusing his superpower at the beginning of the show. How? Well, he's working for a corporation that actually helps the villain. That's a misuse. What's his superpower? He's an amazing computer hacker, right? But she's misusing it at the beginning. And in this A storyline in the cold open, he's also, though, and the reason we love him so much, is he's bringing one villain to justice. Not the big villain, but a small villain, a pedophile in a coffee shop. And as he does this, he brings all of his technical knowledge to bear. And he's busted this pedophile who has a ring of coffee shops, but he's got this pedophile porn ring, and he busts him, but as he does so, he says his core wound. He tells the pedophile, you know what? I sympathize with you. I'm different too. Here's his core wound. I don't know how to talk to people, Elliot says. My dad was the only one I could talk to, and he's dead. What does that give us about Elliot? It gives us his core wound. It makes us empathize with this weird, weird guy. Because we're all weird, right? We want to know our heroes are weird in story because it means they're real. And his dad died. Why? It's very important. A corporation killed him, poisoned him. His dad worked with pollution. And then Elliot says, the corporation's fine. My dad is dead. This is the bleeding wound that's going to tie right in with our A storyline. Fighting a corporation that has so much power that they can hurt people and continue to be inviolate. This is a beautiful way that Esmail brings this story together. Now the pedophile tries to pay him off, but he won't. Elliot says, I don't care about money. Again, another surprise. And then they bust him. And that's the end of the cold open. Now, guys, we're not going to have time today to talk about the 4-act structure in television, but it's important that you know what it is. It's 7 different beats per act. The A storyline has 15 to 16 of these beats. The B has 7 to 8. The C has 3 to 4. And the D has 2. Why do I talk about this if I'm not really going to talk about it? Because you need to look at my television lecture or somebody else's television lecture to make you understand that every act, every hour-long drama has this same structure. No matter how crazy you are and how much you want to break the rules, the reason it's there is to entertain the audience in a rhythm, like a pop song has a bridge, a chorus, a verse, even the craziest ones, right? They all do, because it entertains the audience. So we're not going to talk about that all now, but you need to understand that's true. And each beat has a hero, an antagonist, and a fight inside the beat. A beat is 2 to 3 minutes long. It is a single dramatic act, and there's 28 of them in an hour-long television show. And in Mr. Robot, there is 2 beats in the cold open. One of the beats is this big fight between Elliot and this pedophile, and it's resolved at the end of the beat. It's as if you ate 24 or 28 little canapes as opposed to one giant entree. It entertains you. Now remember, these patterns are all to keep the audience entertained. So we've opened on the A and the B. And by the way, if you're looking at this and viewing it, you'll see Mr. Robot, Christian Slater, right there on the subway at the beginning. He's the mentor. He's a shapeshifter, which means we're going to talk about that in a minute. Mentors heal heroes' core wounds. That's what they're for. And that's what he's going to start doing. Now, in television, they don't heal completely, but they heal a little bit. And remember, we have 3 plots in a mystery thriller. I know I'm talking a lot about this. I know it's confusing. You can watch this several times. The plot in a mystery thriller that's really critical is that there's an emotional change in the hero throughout the story that helps him solve the crime. That's the key in all great mystery thrillers, whether it's movies or television. So, Elliot is in the beginning of Act 1, and we start with our A storyline usually in Act 1. Elliot is on that subway, and the A story question is, can he beat the villains? And we also see Mr. Robot, who says, it's an exciting time to be in the world today, huh? It's Christian Slater. We kind of see him out of the corner of our eye. Well, who's that guy? And that's all we see of him now. Because remember, in a mystery thriller, things are hidden at first. They only pop up a little bit. Now, Elliot tells us, I'm only a vigilante hawker by night. And during the day, I work for a company that is actually evil. Interesting, huh? And we see him go to his office, and we see now the B storyline come in because his friend Angela, who he's not sleeping with, but has been friends since he's a childhood, is arguing with their boss. Now this is really important because Angela is a girl in a man's world. She's a woman in a man's world, and she's being condescended to. The boss is sexist towards her, and we're going to see that that's critical in this story, and it's part of what makes this story so appealing to 20-somethings, because so many women in the workplace are experiencing just this right now. And it's also going to make us like Elliot because he's going to help her, but she's going to teach him how because he screws it up at the beginning. When we first see her, she's telling her boss that she can handle the problem, and the boss is saying, no, you can't. So what is our B story here? Remember, it's can Elliot bond with Angela? If he can, he'll have an emotional change that'll help him solve the crime. By the way, this is a buddy relationship between Angela and Elliot, and if you look at my lectures on Universal Story, you'll see whether it's a buddy or a love story, usually one of the two partners in this relationship is teaching the other one how to be confident, and the other one is teaching the other one how to be caring. These are lacks they have that form the chemical reaction that we're going to want to watch, whether it's The Notebook or Titanic or a cop buddy movie. This is usually the dynamic. And in this story, it is as well. Because Elliot lacks, what do you think? Caring. He's got a little Asperger's. And Angela lacks confidence. So when we first see them, we're seeing her try to justify to the boss that she can handle the situation, and the boss shrugging it off and saying, you can't handle it. Now, suddenly we get what's coming up to be the inciting incident. The boss says to Elliot, we were hacked again. The company we work for, E-Corp, the big company, the evil villain, the real villains in our real crime plot, they were hacked last night. Someone broke in. Elliot's boss is freaked out. It's their biggest client, E-Corporation. And Elliot is the guy who's going to help rescue that. Remember, he's misusing his superpower. He doesn't want to do it. He's working for a company that is actually helping a villain. So Angela is supposed to be in charge in this situation, but she's not, because she's a woman. She's shoved aside. She lacks confidence, and she lets them do it to her. What's her core wound? Because that's important too. Her core wound is she's not powerful. She's letting men tell her she's not powerful. She's going to have a change in this story too. Guys, this is a brilliant story. Esmail is a brilliant creator. So much is going on here. When you watch this story, you will see Angela lacks the confidence she can do this job. She wants Elliot now. The next thing we see is her say to him, she takes him aside, hey, Elliot, why didn't you come to my party last night? Guys, what storyline is that? That's the B storyline. Can Elliot bond with Angela emotionally? Now, Angela is reflecting to him, as a good buddy, what he needs to learn. Elliot, you must bond emotionally with people. And notice what Elliot says to her. Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't make it. And she says, you promised me you would try. She's trying to help him do what? Learn to care. This is a classic relationship dynamic. Now, we go to the D plot, which often happens in the first act. And if you want a breakdown of all these act structures, go to my television lecture on Universal Story. I have all of this broken down, and it's critical that you understand this. And I don't understand why most people don't do this in their books, but it's why I do it. There's another plot here, the D plot. Will Elliot save his shrink from her evil con artist boyfriend? Now, we see that she's a psychologist, but here's what's interesting about Elliot and any character. When you first see a character, you have his wound. Now, what if you're wounded as a person? What have you done? First of all, ask yourself, what's your biggest wound? Okay, emotionally, what's your biggest embarrassment? Now, what have you done to compensate for that in your life? Okay? What do we do when we have a core wound? We compensate, and we do it in bad ways. Jessica Jones, in her show, compensates by having lots of random sex. She's been mind raped by the villain, and so as a consequence, she can't connect to other people emotionally, so she has a lot of mindless sex, yes? In this show, Elliot's core wound is, I'm alone and powerless, so he lies. He's a liar. This is important because when you create a character with a core wound, you want at least 3 or 4 attributes they have that are not good, but they're compensations for their wound. They're things we wish we didn't do, but because we're wounded, we do bad things. He lies. So in the D plot, when he's dealing with his shrink, he lies to his shrink. His shrink knows that he's not telling the truth, but she asks him, why do you feel so alienated, Elliot? Now, Elliot in his head is telling her why. Watch the show. But he's actually not saying a word. But as he's talking in his head, the audience is loving what he's saying, because why does he say he's the way he is? He says, and this is what we always do when we compensate for a wound, you know why I'm this way? Because the world is screwy. And let me tell you how the world is screwy. Our heroes are all screwy. Our heroes are Donald Trump. Our heroes are Bill Cosby. Our heroes are people like that lie, that are hypocrites, that are horrible. Our heroes and our world is full of people who lie. And also, we have crappy movies. We entertain ourselves. We dope ourselves. We get into debt. He doesn't actually say any of this to her. What he says to her is, I'm fine. So we're seeing the disconnect, and we're seeing what Elliot needs to heal, and we're seeing why Elliot is wounded. He does understand with her why he likes her, which is that she's warm. This is why he's there at all. Now she asks him, did you go to Angela's birthday party? Remember, our B-story plot. Can you connect emotionally with people? That's what the shrink is there to help him try to do. This is critical in the story. Remember, in the mystery thriller, it is the emotional change of the hero that helps him solve the crime. If he does not connect emotionally, Elliot will never, ever succeed in this pilot, okay? And remember, this is also a beat. And in a beat, we have a protagonist and an antagonist and a fight. And the fight in this scene is, Elliot, will you tell the truth? Elliot's actually the antagonist in this beat. And Elliot says, yeah, I will, but he doesn't. And they fight. And he finally wins. And that's the climax of that little beat. Each beat has that conflict, right? So let's go back to the A story. When he gets back to his office, we now meet finally both the distraction villain and the real villain. Here they come. E Corporation comes to Elliot's company because they're so angry they've been hacked. And we meet who we think is the villain, Terry Colby, this old white guy with a tie and a... But guess what? He's not the real villain. Remember, in a mystery thriller, there's a distraction plot and a real crime plot. We also, in this scene, are going to meet the real villain, but he's not who we think. Terry Colby is the guy we think is the villain, and so, by the way, is Elliot, because Elliot is a pawn. In a mystery thriller, the hero is a pawn of the villain. He is a very unsuccessful guy who is being used by the real villain to evil ends, and that's true for Elliot. But then at the very end of the scene, notice who Elliot meets. Along with the old fat white guy is this young, sleek, beautiful dude in a perfect suit. His name is Terrell Wellick. And as he goes by Elliot, he says, hey, Elliot, how you doing? Ah, I'm Terrell Wellick. Hey, man, I'm just about your age. Oh, I notice you're using a certain kind of software. I used to do that when I was a hacker. Oh, yeah, I was a hacker. Anyway, it's great to meet you. I'll talk to you later. He is the real villain, and we will not know that until the end of our story. Just as you don't know in LA Confidential who the real villain is till the end of the story. Just as you don't know in Salt who the real villain is till the end of the story. Always true in a mystery thriller. Now, Act 2 opens with our A storyline, and what is Elliot saying? He's saying, I wish I could save the world, but I can't. Why can't I save the world? Now we're going to see explicitly why he's wounded. Not all stories do this, but I urge you to do it if you can. Because if you can show the wound happening to your hero, you will have gobs of sympathy for him. What do normal people do when they get sad? This is what Elliot asks. Well, they reach out to other people, but I can't do that. And we suddenly flash on the screen his mother and him when he was 4, tied to a high chair and her beating him. Explicit. The core wound. This is why he cannot connect. This is the core wound in action, right? And don't think you can ever get away from this. You can't. I don't care if you're writing sci-fi. You need to show this core wound. And it's bleeding. This is true for Don Draper in Mad Men. This is true for Walter White. This is true for Tyrion Lannister in Game of Thrones. What do you think his core wound is, by the way, right? Daddy didn't love me. Well, look what he's going to be doing. He kills his dad in a crossbow while his dad's on the toilet. And many other terrible things because of his core wound. Rust and Marty and True Detective have core wounds that are critical to enjoying the story. Second season of True Detective, not so much. So we see that Elliot was hurt by someone who was supposed to be his strongest caretaker. And when that happens to us, it screws us up terribly. I'm alone, he's thinking. I'm powerless. It also underlines all 4 of our storylines. The B storyline, will he connect to Angela? No. So we see him using what? Here comes another compensation for his core wound. He not only lies, what else do we do when we're bleeding? We do other things. He uses morphine. He blanks out his pain with drugs. And we see him using morphine. Now what else do we see? He uses sex as a way of escaping. A bad reflector character comes in. Now, reflector characters are just characters that reflect something the hero should learn or what he shouldn't learn. This bad reflector is his dealer. She's also a girl, and she also tempts him to do ecstasy with her, and he doesn't want to do it, but he does it. He is moving away from healing in all aspects. We're getting into the second act. Now, guys, we don't have time tonight to talk about another structural issue called the BMMOC structure, but you should know there are 5 times in a television hour pilot when the hero is asked to heal a little bit. These are 5 dramatic climaxes in every great television story. If your story doesn't have them, the rhythm's not going to be there. There's a BMOC pattern in movies. It's more complicated in television. Again, I go into this in my Foundations lecture on University of Story. It's a critical pattern. But it's for another lecture. But he is moving away from healing. He's moving away from connecting in every aspect of his life right now. Okay, so we have a little bit more of a deep plot, but then we get Angela at the office saying, Elliot, come back. I need you. Something terrible has happened. This is the inciting incident. Because what is it? It's our B story. Can Elliot help Angela? Will he connect to her emotionally? She says, I need your help. When he gets there, guess what's happened? There is a huge attack on the evil corporation. And remember, Elliot's company is supposed to keep them safe. And it's an attack that the hacker already there can't solve. Angela can't solve. They need Elliot's superpower. Elliot's boss comes in. He brushes Angela aside again. Remember, she's being treated like a woman who knows nothing. And now we see, if you're watching the episode, that Elliot gives us all these cool, I call it the weed of the story because it's a pleasure for you. He tells us this isn't just a DDoS attack. This is a TOI attack. It's a boot sequence attack. It's a rootkit. All of these things let us know that this story really is not giving us bull. It's telling us the truth about this world, and we're excited when you tell the truth about a world. We want to see that. When you research your story, guys, don't set a story in Pakistan and you being a CIA agent. If you've never been to Pakistan, if you're not a CIA agent, I'm going to know it's horribly stupid before 2 minutes are up. Sam has great technical support for this show. Anyway, so they go down to the server farm with great ticking clocks, with great sequences. Elliot actually solves the issue, and he gets the attack isolated. The hacker he stops, but guess what else happens? He sees a message embedded inside that malware, inside that virus that says, "Leave me here." This is his mentor. This is Mr. Robot. This is his awakening and his call. And we have the C storyline, finally. Will Elliot team up with Mr. Robot to break down the system? And Elliot has a dilemma because as an employee, he's there to get rid of this, to root this out, but he decides to leave the message there because he wants to meet Mr. Robot, and he says, I don't want to delete it. I want it to stay. Will he team up with Mr. Robot? The question is answered right from the beginning, maybe. Now, Act 2 ends with our first M point, which is, remember, our BMMOC story question is he going to break down the villain? Is he going to team up with Mr. Robot to break down the villain? And in the end of our act, we see Mr. Robot and him on a subway. And Mr. Robot says to him, I want to break you out of your prison. I want you to work for me. And in order for him to do that, though, we have a great ticking clock. Watch the show. Mr. Robot gets off the subway and says, if you want to work with me, you're going to join me. If you don't, just stay where you are. And Elliot sits and sits and sits, and as the doors begin to close, voom, he goes through them, and he is going to be with Mr. Robot. Will he hook up with Mr. Robot? That's the C storyline question, and it looks like he is. He now goes with Mr. Robot to Coney Island, to the robot's lair. And he is going to see that what they're all doing there, what all the hackers are doing there, is they are fighting against the big corporation. They're figuring out a way to beat them. But he leaves them not knowing for sure if he's going to join them or not. And when he gets back to his apartment, we get back to the B storyline, because who is waiting for him? Angela. Will he connect with Angela? Caring and confidence. She says to him, I'm glad you're here. Do you want to go in and get high and watch Netflix? Which we all know is a bit of a pseudonym. She wants to hook up with him. Will he? He says yes. But when they get inside, Elliot's drug dealer and friend with benefits is there. So Angela and Elliot do not connect. This is critical. She leaves. Now, he decides to go back to see Mr. Robot again. And we're back to the C storyline. Will he hook up with Mr. Robot? And here's when Mr. Robot poses an irresistible question to Elliot. What if you could take down the one conglomerate that is the most evil conglomerate in the world? What if I told you that this conglomerate is something that controls all of us through our debt? Well, that's what Elliot wants to do more than anything else. And Mr. Robot says, if you get together with me, Elliot, we can wipe out the biggest villain in the world. Now, Elliot doesn't want to commit now. Mr. Robot says, here's a data file. Put it in the system, and it will frame Terry Colby, who we think, and he thinks, is the real villain, and get rid of him. He'll be thrown out of the E Corporation. Elliot says, but he's just one guy. Mr. Robot says, that's how we start. You don't do this all at once. So the invitation has been given. Will Elliot stop the big villains? Will he team up with Mr. Robot? Will he? Mr. Robot says, if you do this, you will have set in motion the largest revolution in the history of the world. Now, how do we decide a question like that? With a montage, because the hero goes away, says, I don't know about this. We hear Neil Diamond's If You Go Away play as we see him thinking as he walks down the subway. Is he going to do this? Will Elliot find and stop the real villains? And we're at our second end point. We're at the end of the third act, and it looks like he's going to maybe do it, but we don't know. Elliot's thinking about it, and we see him go online and check Angela's debt. Angela owes $200,000 in student debt. Will he help her? He could. But guess what? Elliot decides not to do it. This is now the fourth act. We're headed for, in the fourth act, both the low point for the hero and also the high point for the hero. It all happens in Act 4. The obstacle point, which is the moment when he seems to fail, and the climax when he seems finally to succeed. Elliot decides not to frame the villain, so the next day he goes back in and they meet. And they meet with the big, fat, apparent villain. And he says to them, okay, so did you find out why we got hacked or not? So Elliot has decided not to take down the apparent villain until the apparent villain, Terry Colby, pulls this bonehead move. During the meeting, and remember they're at this meeting because they want to find out who hacked them, Colby, Terry Colby, the apparent villain, disses Angela. Angela, remember, is in a sexist world, and her big problem is she doesn't have the confidence to be able to stand up to these guys. And Colby starts talking to her, and she makes a critical mistake. She gives him the wrong date of when the incident took place. And you guys know, if you have a boss who doesn't like you, they're always looking for a reason to fire you, yes? And when Angela makes this little mistake, which doesn't really mean much in the great scheme of things, Colby suddenly goes, wait a minute, you gave me the wrong date. This attack didn't happen on that day. It happened the day before. And suddenly he's talking to Terrell, who remembers our real villain, saying, get her out of the meeting, get her out of the meeting. And Angela is literally thrown out of her own meeting. And the apparent villain, the old white guy, says to Elliot, our hero, you're the one who stopped the hack. We're going to talk to you about it. Subtext, you're a guy, you're a computer guy, she's just a girl. Now, remember, Elliot was about to not frame this old guy. But when he sees what he did to Angela, he changes. And remember, it is the emotional change in the hero that lets him solve the crime in a mystery thriller. He defends Angela in his heart. He says, screw you to Colby. I am going to frame you. It's a brilliant change right in the speech. And he takes the file that will frame Colby and he says, here it is. Now, guys, this is what I mean by having the obstacle and the climax point in one act. The obstacle point comes in the middle of Act 4. But then the climax comes soon after. And the climax is when he says, I am going to frame him. He frames him. And then the story answers the question, will Elliot connect with Angela? Also, it answers the question, will Elliot fight the big guys? But remember, in a mystery thriller, the real villain is hidden. So, when he does this, nothing happens. When we open our next act, he's just waiting. The FBI doesn't get it. Nobody gets it. Nobody digs up the dirt on Colby. And for 19 days, nobody busts Colby. We see him wrap up his shrink plot. He helps his shrink uncover her rat boyfriend. He uses his superpowers to find out the boyfriend's quadruple timing Elliot's shrink. And he helps her. But we're going to wrap up the B2. And here's how we do it. For 19 days, Elliot and Angela don't communicate. But when they do it this way. Have you ever had if you're a guy, have you ever had a girl tell you, don't condescend and try to help me in a particular way because you're being condescending as you do? Angela finally tells Elliot, you know what? You stepped in and tried to help me at that meeting. I didn't want you to do it that way. I want you to help me when I ask you for it, not in a way that undermines me. This is her having the confidence to tell Elliot what she really wants, and she's asking Elliot to care enough about her to do it her way, and he does. He's got Asperger's, but he still does. And in this moment in the story, if this was a movie, they would clinch and kiss. They both want to do it, but remember, this is television. They are never going to fall in love, or if they are, it's going to take 8 years. So they simply stare at each other with longing looks. But we've answered the B-story question. Angela and Elliot have connected emotionally. And she's developed confidence, knowing how to be her own person in a business meeting, and he's developed caring. I care enough about you to do it the way you want. She's teaching him how to care about her. Don't ever stick up for me that way again. Now, since there's no romance because it's TV, we end on our A storyline. Will Elliot find the real villain? And now, as he walks out into Times Square, he sees on the big screen, Terry Colby arrested. Terry Colby was behind the attack on his own company. And Elliot puts his hands up in the air and he goes, yes, 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 I've done it. I've got it. I've vanquished the real villain. But remember, this is a mystery thriller. And in mystery thrillers, the villains often win. This happens in Chinatown. This happens even in a way in LA Confidential. This happens a lot. And as Elliot's celebrating, two men in black suits, while the cops watch and do nothing, bustle Elliot into a limo and they arrest him. And they take him to the same place we started this pilot. And remember where we started this pilot? There are people who control this world and they're shadowy and we don't know who they are. And then at the beginning of the movie, of the television show, we saw them as shadowy figures. And now what do we see? We're about to meet the real villain, the 1% of the 1%. And this time, that shadowy group of people has a light on them, and it's Terrell. And he says, "Hi, Elliot. We've been waiting for you. The real villain has won, and the story has just begun." This, guys, is fabulous television, using all the patterns of the mystery thriller and all the patterns I've taught you right now. This is what's happening in television today. This is why television is so good.